For my book report, I read Look Me in the Eye by John Elder Robinson. I really enjoyed reading this book. It's a true story of a boy growing up with Asperger's. I think the thing that I like the most about this book is that I really got to learn a lot about Asperger's. I didn't know a lot before reading this, and there's a couple of key points that can be brought out in this book that are typical characteristics that people might have who have Asperger's. People with Asperger's sometimes have trouble remembering the names of people, so they can tend to make up names for the people so they remember what to call them. In the book, John Robinson called his little brother Snort, and when he got older he changed the name to Varmint. And he also called his wife Little Bear and then his son Cubby. People with Asperger's sometimes have awkward facial expressions for the circumstance. Sometimes they don't seem to match the circumstance appropriately. One of the best examples comes from the book when John's mom was talking to a friend who was telling a story about a boy getting hit by a train, and John smiled when he heard the story. He got in a lot of trouble for this, but he explained later that what he was really thinking was, wow, I'm really glad that all of my family members are safe. And he smiled because he was relieved to know that everybody he loved was safe. Another characteristic of Asperger's is people sometimes have trouble with social interactions, knowing what to say in a certain circumstance, knowing what to do. One of the points in the book that stands out to me is when John was a little boy. He went up to a girl on the playground and he started petting her, and she got very upset by this and got the teacher, but he explained later in his book that he knows that dogs like it when you pet them, and he was really just trying to be your friend. People with Asperger's can sometimes have extreme talents and gifts. John was incredibly skilled with machines, fixing cars, also designing circuit boards. He designed a lot of different guitars for the band Kiss, and he later worked for Milton Bradley, solving some of their problems for their computerized toys. Asperger's is found to be somewhat genetic related. In the book, John mentions that his son Cubby had some of the characteristics of Asperger's, though not as strong as his, and he even mentions in the book about certain things about his own dad and wondering if his own dad had Asperger's. Being very logical with thinking and direct in conversation is seen with a lot of people with Asperger's. John would pretty much tell anybody exactly what he thought. He asked his uncle the one time when he was getting married if he thought this was going to stick this time, and he also just told people exactly about their cars, what was wrong with them, or just flat out told them what he felt about them or other circumstances. Often people with Asperger's don't develop a lot of peer relationships, or they develop them at a later age than people typically do. It took John a long time to really be able to develop relationships with people. I think one of the things that really stood out to me is that he commented that a bunch of psychologists and teachers when he was little would always say, John prefers to play alone. But he said, really, I didn't prefer to play alone. I wanted to play with people. I just didn't even know how to play with other people. Sometimes people with Asperger's have trouble understanding sarcasm and humor. There are times in the book John's wife had to explain to him certain jokes, and also people with Asperger's can be anxious and jumpy. I hope I've showed you some of the common characteristics of Asperger's by using John Elder Robinson's book as an example. It was a great book that I'd highly recommend.